That's right. I'm not right. You didn't know he'd upset you. That's something I said.
Keep going. We can't start early. Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to you all. We're gathered here in this moment, family and friends of Anthony Rivers, to bid him farewell and to celebrate his life. And I'd like to start by offering my sincere sympathy to Anthony's family, his siblings Janet and Liz and Patrick, his brother-in-law Tony, his close friends Alan and Una, his cousins and the wider family, his work colleagues, his American football friends, medical professionals from St. James's Hospital, Dr. Satish J. Wardeen, pardon my pronunciation, I'm sure I've got that wrong, and Dr. Mac and Nalan, and neighbours and friends. And we also welcome those who are joining us online. His sister-in-law in Australia, Katherine Rivers, his niece Ellie, nephews Alex, Sam and Tom. And everybody here and in the room, you're very welcome, and thank you for being here in this moment to be with the family at this difficult time. Now, this ceremony is in two parts. So after this celebration in this room, we will make our way either by foot or by car down to the cemetery, which is just beyond the Headford Arms Hotel, for Anthony's final resting place. His ashes are here. So I would ask you that when this part of the ceremony is over, that often, there's an opportunity to sympathise with the family. I would ask you to delay that, please, if you don't mind, because we're continuing the ceremony down at the graveyard. So if you just delay those sympathies until the graveyard. And then afterwards we'll be going to the Vanilla Pod in the Headford Arms Hotel, where you're all very welcome for lunch. Now, it goes without saying that there's always great sadness, and when someone dies who is close to us, and the person whom we loved is now gone from us, and we're left with a great void. But I do feel that amidst the sadness and the natural outpouring of grief and the awful sense of loss, it's important to take the opportunity to celebrate a life well lived. And so, as we gather here today to honour and say goodbye to Anthony, we'll pay tribute to him and celebrate his well lived life. I'm Joe Armstrong, and I should point out that I didn't personally know Anthony, but I was asked by the family in my capacity as a humanist celebrant to conduct this ceremony of his and celebration of his life. Now, humanism simply encourages people to think for themselves, and as long as you're a human, then you're as much part of this gathering as anybody else. So regardless of what your worldview is, or if you are religious or not, it doesn't matter. We're all united in this room in our shared humanity. So whoever you are, wherever you're from, whatever you believe in, and whoever you love, you're very welcome to be here right now, and thank you for being here. I'm now going to invite Janet, his sister, to speak.
Next to me are the symbols of Anthony's life for us to remember him by. Also, back in the day when ties were worn regularly, he built up a collection of wacky ties which he was very fond of. So Alan, Patrick and my husband Tony are each wearing one.
May I?
Yeah.
Could I ask this gentleman to stand up? Popeye the sailor, and we have
Taz.
Thank you.
Soapy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then, first of all, thank yous from the bottom of our hearts to all the medical staff who cared for Anthony. Your care was expert and loving. Also to Alan and Una for your friendship and visits. Anthony's fantastic neighbours who always kept an eye out for him, and our cousins for your constant support. I think living in Ireland for the past 25 years really suited Anthony, and he became less shy and much better at mixing. I knew this unutterably when I was editing the photos of our wedding 16 years ago, and every photo of Anthony, he was with a different woman. The family have been comforted by the range and warmth of the lovely comments about Anthony. And thinking back to my memories of Anthony, one of my earliest memories came to mind when I was recently walking through Dublin Airport, looking at the wonderful old photos of it. And that memory was we were flying back to Luton, and Anthony must have been about 2.5. And he spent the whole flight playing with his toy car, which he pushed endlessly round the edge of the plane window. And of course, it got lost down the side of the seat. Many of you will know he was a very good cook. I think his inspiration was our mother's cooking, and the first paella we ever ate, cooked by the maid who came with the apartment we hired for our first family holiday in Europe in 1967. An offer of a meal cooked by him was not to be missed. His Chinese food was exceptional, and he would cook that with chopsticks. It's a level of competence I will never achieve. In the last few years, he was allowed very little salt, but we worked out how, when he got home, he could cure his own bacon with a natural salt-free alternative. Over his time in hospital, I got very good at smuggling food in. So let me know if you want any tips. I even smuggled in champagne for his 65th birthday in June. Alan and I opened it for Anthony that evening. Unfortunately, a nurse came in at that point. So we put the bottle and the glasses on the basin and stood together in front of the basin like two kids caught on the naughty step. The nurse didn't say anything, and we didn't. Also, on my first visit that day, I wore a chain of lights as a necklace. They said happy birthday, and I turned them on to his surprise and delight as I went into the room. His bravery and resilience, especially in the last 2.5 years in hospital, were astounding. And we don't really understand how he didn't have several meltdowns, given his declining health. But we are hugely glad that he didn't, as it made the quality of his life better. He even had a pet in hospital. It was a gull who would turn up outside one of the windows of one of his rooms. So we called it Hitch, after Alfred Hitchcock. And that led to a series of cuddly gulls as presents, and a fridge magnet of a gull saying, "I want your chips." Just before Anthony died, my husband Tony heard a flock of gulls outside. And finally, going back to Anthony and Ireland, Ireland also really suited his sense of humour, and increasingly birthday cards from him would have a greeting in Irish in them. And I like to think he would have learned even more Irish as the years progressed. And so finally, Gu rev tu e niv lath, Ursula meg fiseg on deal, Gu will tu morev.
Janet, that was great. Thank you very much. That was gorgeous. And now, sorry?
There's no subtitles.
No subtitles. No. Don't worry, the Irish wouldn't know what was being said. Now, if I could invite Liz, his sister, to speak to us.
Thank you.
So let me tell you a bit about Anthony's life, or Tony. Many of you knew him as Tony. So he was born in 1959 in St Albans, which is a small cathedral town just outside London. And our parents were Bill, who was a Londoner, and Teresa, who was a Kells woman, who'd moved to England for work in the 40s, as many did. So Janet came first, then Anthony was the first boy, and then me, and then Patrick. And we all went to school in St Albans, and Anthony got a scholarship to this Catholic boys' school, which was run by an order of American brothers called St Columba's College. And that American sort of introduced him to American culture, and that was to be a lifelong theme, really, for him. And then he went to university. He studied chemical engineering at Newcastle in the north of England. And then when he left university, there was a recession on at the time, so it was really hard to find work. And he ended up working in the bar at the local arts centre venue. But after a few years, he managed to he got a grant to go and do a master's in materials science. And through that, he was able to get a job at University College London as a lab technician. So he did that for about 13 years, and then the funding for that ran out, so he was back on the job market again. And so he applied for some jobs, and then he decided to go off on a trip around the world while he was waiting for the replies to come in. And when he came back, Intel had called. This is before the days of mobile phones. So he went for an interview, and because of all his lab experience, he got the job with Intel. And after generations of the Irish diaspora, of the Irish family leaving Ireland to find work, there was a wonderful sort of squaring of the circle of him moving back to Ireland for work to further his career. And he decided to settle in Lucan and bought his house there and was very happy in Lucan. So one of his big hobbies, which you'll see, was American football, and I know there's quite a few here today representing that part of his life. And so he'd started, when he was living in England, he'd started refereeing American football. And when he came to Ireland, there was this sort of fledgling league, so he got involved with that and eventually became the head referee in Ireland, the top official. So he really sort of worked his way up through the ranks and would spend his weekends driving off different parts of the country, refereeing, managing a whole team of officials, and then going off to Europe and running clinics where they would learn about all the rules. And and a big fixture was every year on the 4th of July at the American ambassador's residence in Dublin. They'd have an American football game, and he would be part of that. So he loved his football. And it's been so touching seeing all the comments on Facebook from his football colleagues about him as a referee. And I picked out a few quotes. There's one from Killian Smith. He said, "Tony's work as a referee and director of officiating left a lasting and positive impact on the sport. He brought wisdom and a calming influence to every situation. But above all, he was appreciated by his many friends and colleagues for their friendship and support." And another quote, "Tony was calm, knowledgeable, rational and fair. Often in the face of a player who was feeling big feelings." And he loved telling the story about once he was reffing and this player came up and was really, giving him a lot of aggro and stuff, really swearing at him. And Anthony had a microphone, and this player got to the end of his rant. And Tony says, "You do realise my mic's still on and the whole stadium was heard what you said. Nothing more needed to be said." So, yeah, that was his football. So he had many hobbies. Janet's talked about his cooking. That was complemented by his gardening, and his little garden in Lucan managed to produce an astounding amount of produce, of damsons and blackcurrants, and he was even growing his own garlic and vegetables, and everything would get pickled, jammed, chutneyed. There was always this amazing stash of preserves that were always really, really tasty, and you never knew what to expect. But he was so creative and ingenious with that, yeah. And he loved travel as well. He did a number of round-the-world trips. He particularly liked America, so with Intel, he spent time in California, Arizona, New Mexico. And he loved Asia, particularly China and Japan and Australia. And he once booked on this cycling tour of China, which involved having a guide and a support. And he got there and realised that actually he was the only person who'd booked on the trip. And they didn't cancel it. So he was quite happy pedalling around with a van coming a few metres behind him with his guide and all his luggage. So, he really loved his travelling. Yeah. So in his mid-30s, he started to have some health issues and he was diagnosed with lupus. And so this started really a long journey of having to manage his illness and all the different conditions and the complexity of that he had. But he always stayed so positive and just really focused on what can I do, what can I make the most of. He never let it get him down. He was quite extraordinary. And then we come to lockdown. That was particularly hard for him because he was on his own. Because of his vulnerabilities, he really had to isolate You know, he spent long periods on his own, and he couldn't travel to be with our mother, who he was very close to. He couldn't come back to England. So that was really hard. And then in February 2022, he had a medical emergency that took him into hospital, and he spent most of the last 2.5 years there before he died. And I'd really like to echo what Janet said about the extraordinary care he had from St James's Hospital, and we're so grateful and appreciative to Dr Brenda Griffin, Dr Satish Jaywadeen, the nephrology department, and the staff of Mary Mercer's ward. And Brenda, we called her Brenda, you know, often said that Anthony was by far the most complex person she'd ever treated. And yet the level of care, the level of joined up care, of really paying attention, of holding him and never giving up on him, and always wanting to help him to make the most of what he had. And just the lovely care from all the nurses on the ward was just amazing, and it just made it so much, being at a distance, it made it so much easier knowing that he was so well cared for and that we could completely trust his medical care. So we really want to thank you so much. And you know, we talked about our cousins. I particularly want to mention Ita Cole and Sister Mary Doonan, who've been such a support through this time. And his lovely neighbours, Carol and Shan, and Alan and Una, his dear friends, who were so with him for those last years in hospital. So I was looking through all the comments from his colleagues and thinking about the qualities that we really appreciated. And the word that kept coming up was a gentleman, what a gentle person he was, and a gentle giant. Yeah, and he really was such a sort of gentle, calm, kind person, and generous as well. He was really generous with his time, his expertise. He was a mentor to people without looking for anything in return. He just generously gave of that. He was comfortable in his own skin. You know, he didn't worry about what people thought about him, which enabled him just getting freedom on the football pitch or wherever at work or in life, just to do the right thing and follow the rules and apply them in a fair way. And his sense of humour has been much commented on. And I was so touched in hospital, even when he was so ill, he'd always have a smile and a joke for the staff when they came in, and he never lost his sense of humour. So, yeah, I'm very proud to call him my brother. Yeah, he was a very special person. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Liz, for those lovely words. And now Patrick, Anthony's brother, will speak.
Anthony was always sharing, caring and trusting. This was very evident in the condolences. In honour of Anthony's scientific, evidence-based background, I have a few memories that I'd like to recount on these themes. Sharing. We shared a bedroom, I guess, until Anthony went to university. I'm 10 years younger than him, so I guess that can't have been much fun for him and very convenient. One night when he was still up and I was fast asleep, I had a brief sleep-talking episode. I'm told, and reminded of this many times afterwards, that I yelled out, "I've got a good idea." Not only did this give Anthony the fright of his life, but when he'd recovered from the shock of that, he then spent some time waiting for the follow-up of what this great idea was. Unfortunately, that was it. Maybe Anthony has found out now. Caring. We had some family holidays in Rome when I was a kid. On one instance, it was decided that Anthony and I would travel to this holiday on train. I have no ideas what discussions were had at family level, at parental level. But as a parent of 4 children, I know I would have had second thoughts about such a plan. It is a measure of the trust that Anthony inspired, that he'd take care of me, that plan went ahead and we made the journey. As a lifelong anorak, that's an English name for a nickname for a train spotter, I can say that it was brilliant. And Alan was here with us the other day and actually mentioned it unprompted, that it was something that Anthony spoke about. So it's just a fantastic memory of something that we did together. I actually had a sleepwalking incident on this. There's a bit of a theme here, you can tell. Thankfully, I didn't get off the train on my own, and I am here today to talk to that. Trusting. Imagine saving up your hard-earned cash to buy a sporty hot hatch, an Escort XR3, the bee's knees in the days. And then your kid brother passes his driving test. Well, I was trusted to drive said hot hatch and not put it in the ditch. I think this was around the time my wife and I were courting, and maybe this played some part in my success here. But it was a real sign of the trust that he placed in people, particularly as I'd crashed the predecessor of the Escort, the Fiesta, not that long before. So, yes. Thank you very much.
Well done, Patrick. And now I have a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, more music. Thank you. It's my honour now to read the words of Alan Thornberry, who's looking after our music over there. So Alan wrote this, and I'm going to read it. They are Alan's words. Anthony to many, Ant to some, and always Tony to me. I first got to know Tony when we started working together in a group at Intel over 10 years ago. Initially, we all travelled to the US together, which meant long flights, followed by days of hard work and enjoyable evenings socialising. Those shared experiences gave us plenty of time to get to know each other. Quiet and unassuming, with such a beautiful and kind nature, it was easy to be drawn to Tony. He was someone who was so easy to like and love. For me, it was the beginning of a great friendship. Tony carried himself with a gentleness that was apparent to everyone he met. He might have come across as quiet at first, but once he engaged you in conversation, there was no getting away. Meeting Tony in the corridor, canteen, or while out shopping inevitably added time to whatever you were doing. He could keep you there chatting about umpiring, food, travel, the crop from his garden, and any of the other interests he loved. He spoke with such honest joy that it absorbed you into his world, making you feel like he was genuinely delighted to see you. He was always fully present in any conversation, never distracted. The only difficult thing about talking with Tony was finding a way to stop. He was always generous with his time at work. With his intelligence and vast knowledge, Tony was a go-to person for me and many others when it came to difficult problems. You could turn up at his desk any time and could expect to be directed to a chair in silence with a single raised finger. This was his way of letting you know you were very welcome, but to sit quietly while he finished concentrating on whatever he was doing. Once he was ready, he'd turn and gently ask what he could do for you, giving his full attention. Tony could never be rushed. When you sought out Tony's help, you knew you wouldn't get a quick answer, but you would get the right one. And of course, you had to allow extra time at the end for a chat. The last few years were difficult for Tony. He had so much to contend with: COVID, his health issues, losing his beloved mum, and of course the long time in hospital. He had every right to get angry, feel sorry for himself, or develop a negative attitude. But he never did. He accepted his situation with such dignity, and more than that, he retained a positivity that never waned. During every visit to him at St. James's Hospital, he would have a smile on his face and a sparkle in his eye. He'd be full of chat and plans for the future. He was such wonderful company, and to be honest, I would rarely have to say much at all, just listen and ask the odd question, and the time would fly by filled with Tony's stories about his life, the many people he knew and the many places he'd seen. I think he could remember every detail of every play he'd ever called as an umpire. The memories of those memories in his life meant so much to Tony and sustained him through the toughest of times. Everyone here today, family and friends, was part of those memories, and everyone here played their own special part in keeping Tony's spirits up through his declining health. Tony's presence in my life, Alan's life, is something that I will always hold dear. His warmth, wisdom, and unwavering positivity have left an indelible mark on me. It has also been lovely to meet and greet his lovely and wonderful family. It was my privilege to know Tony and a privilege to be there in the last moments of his life. Though I will miss him deeply, I take comfort in knowing that his kindness and joy will live on in my memories of him and all the time we spent together in the last few years. Goodbye, my friend. And thank you for writing those lovely words. I'm now going to, this next contribution is very special because we're going to hear the words of Anthony himself. So I'm going to invite Alan.
There you go.
Thank you.
I'm another Tony. We get everywhere. Anthony was invited by the Takeda pharmaceutical company to be a patient ambassador as someone who suffered with secondary immunodeficiency, SID to his medical friends. For that is what his doctors and nurses became over the years. These words are an extract from a talk that he gave at an ambassadors meeting in May 21. When you see a swan swimming on a river, it might look serene, but there's a lot going on beneath the surface. When you look at me, it may seem as though there's nothing wrong, but there is. It certainly could be easy to give in to a woe is me situation, but I prefer to look for solutions rather than feeling sorry for myself. I say, okay, I have these things wrong with me, so let's find the way to manage the current situation, whatever it may be. Hello, my name is Tony, but to my family, I'm Anthony. I like to share my story of living with SID as a result of lupus. He's not someone you'd really want to live with, though. I live in Ireland now. I grew up in England. I was the middle child, neatly spaced between my two sisters. Then 10 years later, my brother came along. We had fun together. I'm still close with my family. Sports played a huge role in my life. My sisters were not that interested in athletic activities. But when my younger brother arrived, I had a willing partner. We could often be found kicking a ball in the alley beside our house. At school, I played basketball and rugby. In fact, I was a sideline official for the school rugby team for a complete undefeated season. Without bias, I carried a fair flag. It was around the period that my passion for officiating began. Refereeing is now an integral part of my personal experience, but I will get to that in a bit. After secondary school, I went to university to study chemical engineering, but just as I was about to embark on my career, there was a recession which made a significant impact on the engineering industry. So what did I do? I became a bar manager for a local municipal venue that hosted events for a wide variety of patrons, including the Queen of England. Yes, I actually had to guard an entry point during the meet and greet, and it was a thrill to see Her Majesty. Despite the adventures of it all, bar work was not where I planned to spend the rest of my life. I returned to study for a master's degree in material science, hard work but worth it. After finishing, I got a research job at a big university in London, where I set up a new lab facility among other duties. I was there for many years and later switched jobs and focus, but I've never strayed far from my original path. These days, I am a systems programmer for Intel. Sports remained a keen interest, and during my university, I joined the County Rugby Referee Society. Then American football began to be shown on a new TV channel in the UK. There were just 4 channels back then in 1985. I was hooked and I switched from rugby to American football. I refereed my first game in 1986 and continued actively doing so until December 2016, when my health just wasn't cooperating any longer. It was in about 1995 when I began to experience unexplained fatigue. I didn't pay much attention at first. Between my responsibilities as an engineer and American football referee, I figured I was just doing too much. I rested on the weekends when I could and pushed along. Then I had some severe abdominal pain, which sent me to A&E that resulted in an 8-day stay in hospital. The doctors did tests, but it would be 4 months before they finally diagnosed me with lupus. I had no idea what lupus was, but I was told it was an autoimmune disease. Eventually, I got a more specific diagnosis of SLE with APH and AIHA, basically a very complex combination, and I was in the poo. How a medical diagnosis can change your life's direction in numerous ways is astonishing. During this time, I had received a job offer from a company in Singapore. When I informed them of the diagnosis, they withdrew the job offer by email overnight. It was a big setback, but I did not let it keep me back, as it were. For several years, not much happened with my health, but in 2001, I experienced a flare-up of my lupus, which wiped me out for nearly 2 months. I was treated with steroids and was okay for a while, but then in 2003, I had a deep vein thrombosis and was placed on blood thinners. I just dealt with my health as needed, and as the years ticked by, I continued to build my career in engineering. I also developed my American football refereeing skills. By taking part in training seminars in the US, I was really moving up the ladder of success. In fact, in 2013, I was chosen to be one of the refs at the Euro Bowl Championship, which is similar to the Super Bowl in the US. It was in December 2016 that everything really changed, and my life right along with it. Around this time, I was told everything was going a bit haywire, and that included my kidneys. There I was at the top of my referee career, and then I fell off the edge into a world unknown. I could no longer keep up with the intensity of running around all over the field, as it was not fair to others. It had been hard enough to not be able to be on the field since 2016, but then I was restricted on how far I could travel to watch as well. I always had to worry about being near to Dublin should something go awry with my health. I continued to help from the sidelines when I could, but even this was not possible as my health diminished further. Lupus was never expected nor planned for, but it definitely had interfered with the plans I made when I was first looking towards my future. Then to have to manage additional chronic health conditions due to my weakened immune system on top of everything else, well, let's just say my limits and patience have been repeatedly tested. For so long, my SID went undiagnosed, but not unnoticed by me or my various doctors. Still, there was never an actual name for the strange symptoms. I accepted long ago that this is the lot in my life, and always choose to do what I can to make things better. I have an analogy for all of this. I think about my 2 careers, engineering and refereeing. Both require acute attention to detail and problem solving. Both require accuracy and careful planning and training. Things can still go haywire, no matter how much effort is experienced. A computer program code can malfunction, or a football play, however well practiced, can go awry. That is just life. No one can plan for everything life throws at you, but you can develop your attitude and skills to help you along the way. Since my earlier diagnosis with lupus and the chronic ailments due to SID, I've missed important family events and 5 seasons of football. This has been hard on me emotionally. If ever I've had a moment of self-pity, I'd say it's been these last few years. Because of being away from the action, I don't think I realised just how much of my emotional connection came from my regular interactions with my colleagues, both on and off the field. I really noticed this at the last final I went to watch in 2019. At the end of the game, when everyone was milling around waiting for the presentations, I felt so apart from everyone that I just left the stadium. Not able to be able to participate anymore was just too much to handle. I will keep trying to strengthen my health so that one day I may be able to take to the field again. It's always good to have a goal. I look healthy, it's true. And sometimes people don't believe I'm ill. I do not like to complain, nor do I wish to let anyone down. I've had such love and support from my family, friends, and medical teams over the years, for which I will be eternally grateful. Still, it's important always to remember that you never know what someone is going through. We're all swans in some way. I will conclude with a few thoughts of my own. Anthony should and always will be remembered as someone who was big in stature, quiet and humble of nature, extremely intelligent, generous with his time, a loyal friend, dedicated to his work and hobbies, ready to help and offer advice to those who asked, focused on finding solutions to any situation that arose, for he always thought out of the box. Some people thought he could be slow to make a decision, but he was probably light years ahead of us, assessing all the options to reach the right solution. He was steadfast in his resolve, grateful for the love and support given to him by all his friends, neighbours, family, everybody here. Take all of the above and you get the big man that he was.
Thank you, Tony, for reading those lovely words. Very powerful hearing Anthony's own words, very poignant moments in that. We're now going to have another piece of music, so thank you.
My hometown. Now Main Street's whitewashed windows and vacant stores. Seems like there ain't nobody wants to come down here no more. They're closing down textile mill across the railroad tracks. Woman says these jobs are going, boys, and they ain't coming back to your hometown, to your hometown, to your hometown, to your hometown. There's nothing care, you laid in bed, talking about getting out, packing up our bags, maybe heading south. 35, you gotta go of our own now. That's not a saddle up behind the wheel. Said, son, take a good look around. This is your hometown.
As we're listening to that piece of music, I looked at my Fitbit and it has a pumping heart, and I just want to, our lives are short and precious. Let's each and every one of us live our lives to the full, as I'm sure Anthony has done. And so our ceremony for Anthony will shortly draw to a close, and it's been wonderful hearing these stories about Anthony and the special time we've had to reflect on his life. The family have asked me to tell you that everyone here is invited back to the Vanilla Pod, which is in the Headford Arms Hotel, for a lunch, and that'll be after the graveyard. If you prefer not to visit the graveyard, feel free to go straight there, and we'll join you then after the graveyard. I'm guessing maybe we'll be there by 2 o'clock or something like that. But straight from here, we're going to go to the graveyard, and you're obviously welcome to join us on foot or in cars or what have you. Shortly, we will leave here, and by the way, it takes about 16 minutes to walk, just in case you're wondering how far is it. Google assured me it's a 16-minute walk, so accommodate yourself to whatever that might be for you. So I know everyone has their own personal beliefs, but we do all know that, as sure as night follows day, life is followed by death, and it's the natural order of things. Each and every one of us in this room will die. But I think it's also important and hopefully comforting to think that of the continuum of life, and how your influence can go on through those whom you have loved and befriended and worked with in your life, and those who will remember you fondly. And in this regard, I think the words of Samuel Butler, a 19th century philosopher, sum it up well. He said, "I fall asleep in the full and certain hope that my slumber shall not be broken, and that though I be all forgetting, yet shall I not be forgotten, but continue that life in the thoughts and deeds of those I loved." And with those words, we finish this part of our ceremony, In a few moments we will head to the graveyard, and we will leave, of course, with heavy hearts and sadness at having lost Anthony. But it's my hope too that our hearts will be uplifted from the wonderful stories we have heard about him. So we're going to have a last piece of music, and during the piece of music the three siblings will get ready, and if you could just make room, because they're going to go out that way, I think. Okay? So please be upstanding if you can.
All I once had.
We just have to leave it. More? Say that. Okay, I think we're all here. Can you hear me? If you can't hear me, let me know. Can you all hear? Okay. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose, a time to be born and a time to die. So here we are in the cemetery in Kells at the family grave, which will be Anthony's final resting place. Just a short while ago, we had a very full celebration of Anthony's life. But now the time comes for our final farewell. Patrick, where's Patrick? You're going to read.
Thoughts during these times of separation. The dearer and richer our memories, the more difficult the separation. But gratitude converts the pangs of memory into a tranquil joy. The beauties of the past are not endured as a thorn in the flesh, but as a gift precious for its own sake. We must not wallow in our memories or surrender to them, just as we don't gaze all the time at a valuable present, but get it out from time to time, and for the rest hide it away as a treasure we know is there all the time. Treated in this way, the past can give us lasting joy and inspiration.
Thank you, Patrick. Now, Anthony was fond of gardening, and we have a basket here just in front of Liz. And in the basket, the family have gathered flower petals, twigs from his beloved trees and herbs. In a few moments, Liz, Janet and Patrick will commit the urn containing Anthony's ashes to the earth. And after they have done that, I invite each of you in your own time to come up and take a petal or a twig or a herb from the basket and place it in the grave. And while that's all happening, we'll have some music. And remember, after then we go back to the Headford. You're all welcome to go back. Vanilla Pod. Thank you.
Once had a sweetheart. I loved her right well. I loved her for good since I lost my dear. She went away from me. Dear, now shall friendly no sunlight round her did sparkle and play, saying it will not be long, love, till our wedding day. And you follow when glow from the green south on half rose, half white, I slip from my casement and I run away. Then it will not be long, love, till
Who's that?